Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Talks at Google event. My name is Shreya Vedant, and I support the Pixel software security teams here at Google as the technical program manager. And I am very thrilled to have our guest for today. That is Lisa Lutoff-Perlo, the Vice Chairman of External Affairs at Royal Caribbean Group, who is a high impact leader of in the travel and hospitality industry. Lisa, very thrilled to have you join us. Lisa has the vision and strategy that propelled Celebrity Cruises to achieve transformational financial results as a brand within the Royal Caribbean Cruises portfolio. But the thing I would love to emphasize on is she has dramatically increased the number of women in leadership roles throughout the Celebrity brand. Her passion for building extraordinary ships and creating unique experiences while opening the world through travel has brought recognition and countless awards to her and the Celebrity Cruise Line. Lisa and Celebrity Cruises have together achieved a global impact, earning her a reputation as a trailblazer, bringing transformation, diversity, and inclusion into the travel and hospitality industry and onto the bridges of ships. She's here, and as we talk about the book, Making Waves, a woman's rise to the top using smarts, heart, and courage. Hi, Lisa. That was
Hello.
quite
Wow, that was great. Wow. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful being with you here today.
so glad to have you here. And I am ready to jump in right with the bunch of questions I've been waiting to get your inputs on if you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. The first question pretty much is leading an organization and writing a book. I'm guessing in the initial portion was a siloed effort. What was the driving motivation behind it?
Well, I look at making waves as something that is extraordinary and I never envisioned in my career, just like my career itself. I never fancied myself or thought of myself as a published author, but here I am. And I did it to give back, I guess, is probably the best way to put that. I've been told so many times throughout so many years that because of my story, because of what I've done, because of what I've accomplished, because of what I've done for others, and you talked about it a little bit in my bio with the gender diversity that I've been able to accomplish in our industry that's been heavily male dominated. Everybody told me you need to write a book, you need to share your lessons. And so I did that, and I'm very excited that it's published, and I'm hoping that the readers might take one or many lessons from it, and hopefully it will help them navigate their own careers and lives.
That's great to hear. I know you mentioned writing a book wasn't on your career or agenda, but a lot more organic effort. How does that map to your professional growth and reaching the pinnacle of the hospitality industry? Was that something that you always set your vision on?
No, I think it was probably more of a natural outcome as a pinnacle of, here I started at the very bottom and I worked my way up to the top. And I think my story is one of those, if I can do it, you can do it stories. And as I reached the pinnacle of my career, I thought this book was a natural outcome, especially based on all the feedback that I got that, you really should write a book. And so I said, okay. And I talked to a few people that are in the publishing industry and world, and they agreed. And so I got started. It took 6 years. So I want people to know that this wasn't an overnight thing. There were a lot of stops and starts along the way. I had a really difficult time finding someone to help me write the book because I didn't have time to write it all myself, but I also needed someone that got me and was passionate about my story and could help me write it in my voice because it was really important to me that it was in my voice. And then COVID hit. So that was 2 years that we just lost. And now here it is. I'm so excited that it's finally out there in the world.
Very excited as well. I have to admit, I did order a copy myself, but it hasn't made it in time for me to actually pull
Uh,
it in. Share it with our
Here, I'll hold it up, and I hope your listeners will. After this discussion, I hope they'll want one too. And I'm so glad. I'm honored that you ordered it, and I really hope you enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to reading and taking the nuggets back into my personal life. One of the things that really resonates with me is you talk a lot about leading in a male dominated society or industry.
Yep.
We are close enough to the Women's Day and Women's Month.
Yeah.
So I do want to poke on it a little more. How different does that look, trying to lead in an industry that may not yet be as diverse? And are there any lessons or learnings that you'd have for our younger readers or folks that are listening that they could benefit from?
Well, when I first, I've been with the company for 39 years. And when I first got into a role in the company where I felt there was not good women representation was in operations in 2005. And I entered a part of the company that no women had ever led before. So there are 3 different positions that I've had in our company where I was the first woman to do it. Clearly, my president and CEO role was the highest of those roles and clearly the most visible. But when I was the senior vice president of hotel operations for Celebrity, I was the first woman to ever do that. And then when I was executive vice president of all of operations at Royal Caribbean back in 2012 through 2014, I was the first woman to do that. And what I realized is I feel 2 different ways about being a woman who rose from the bottom to the top in our industry. Number one is I never felt that my career path, my gender had anything to do with my career path. I felt like all of the positions that I was appointed to, number one, I was appointed to them by men. And number 2, I did not feel like being a woman in any way influenced their decision of me getting those positions. However, what I did realize is when I was given those positions and I was now leading men and I had never worked in operations before, I ran into a lot of skepticism. And it wasn't always easy for me to transition into those leadership roles when people were wondering, mostly men were wondering why I was given those roles when I hadn't worked in that part of our company before. And so I learned that what you need to do is you need to overcome the skepticism, prove them wrong, one interaction and one decision at a time. And number 2, you need to let people know that you respect what they do and you're not there to do their jobs and you're not pretending you know better than they do how to be a captain or a hotel director, but that you're hoping that they understand over a short period of time why you were selected and the attributes you do bring to the role. Because then I think when you establish, that baseline of trust and mutual respect, I think it makes it a lot easier because many of us are still in industries that still have mostly men in them. And the only way we're going to continue to break into those industries and get more of these leadership roles is if number 1, we're given the opportunity, and number 2, we're accepted once we get into those roles.
That's a great advice. Specifically, when you hit on the part where you didn't let the gender or any of the dynamics impact the credibility and the value that you'd bring onto the role. That makes a lot of sense. And as I was looking through, trying to learn more about the book in the context of it, I came across a specific section where you talk more about managing upwards, but it's not just your immediate managers, it's at a higher level. I'd love to hear your take on why that is important for anyone that's looking to rise up and why that would make a difference versus just the immediate leadership chain.
Well, I learned that the very hard way in my career, and I talk a lot about it in one of the chapters in the book. I was at a very high operational role in both brands, both of our big brands in our company, and the presidents and CEOs of those brands decided to leave their position. One left the company to go and pursue another opportunity, and one left the position to go into a different high level position within the company. And in both of those circumstances, both of those men recommended me for their job. And they said, she's qualified, she's ready, she'll do a great job. You really need to give Lisa this president and CEO role. And both times the decision was made that I wasn't going to get the job, and the ultimate decision maker felt I wasn't ready.
Mhm.
And he couldn't really tell me why. But what I learned as I was having very honest conversations with him about my frustration, because at a certain point you say, what else do I need to do if I've done so well and accomplished so much that these two men recommended me for the job? What is it that I haven't done that is holding you back from making that decision? And again, what I realized was that he didn't have enough exposure to me. He didn't know me well enough. He didn't know what I accomplished. He didn't know how I made decisions. He didn't know that I failed and how I overcame those failures. And I learned that it's because I wasn't visible enough to him during all of this time during my career. And I think it was 10 years, I guess, between 2005 and late 2014. So it was 10 years when I started operations and when I finally was appointed to this role. And he was 2 levels up. He wasn't just my boss. He was 2 levels up. So I learned that you really need to navigate your career in a way that not just the people that see you every day understand who you are and what you've accomplished. You really have to broaden your PR campaign. And honestly, I hate to just put it in the most simple of terms, but it really is a PR campaign. We all need to be, the stewards of our own marketing and PR campaigns, because I think women especially think I'm just going to do a good job and I'm going to get great results and I'm going to be rewarded for it. But the real world does not happen like that. And so I learned that as a valuable lesson. And then once I did work more closely with him, once he became a mentor, once he took more interest in my career, I finally turned those 3 no's into a yes.
That's a perfect segue to my question on why would anyone be interested in taking their personal time and invest it in the growing or budding talent, because it does take a lot of effort, and in a lot of ways it doesn't have the reverse gratification for the person that's investing in the career. So have you encountered scenarios where it's been difficult getting, we hear about sponsors and mentors and enlisting everyone to support you, but what does that look like in execution?
Well, first of all, I'm a big believer in sponsors and advocates. I think mentors are wonderful, but the people that are really going to help you achieve your career aspirations are your sponsors and your advocates. They're actually going to help you get the positions, or they're in a decision-making role where they can appoint you to certain positions. So you need to make sure you have those in your corner, and you have to make sure they're the right people with the right influence in your organization. But what I've learned over these last many years is that leadership development, and succession planning is critically important to the health and success of any organization. And there is a lot more focus and effort and energy in that regard now than there ever has been. So not only was I in a company where people wanted to advance me because we needed to develop bench strength, we needed to promote from within, but I was also in the boardroom in part of my role. And I know that the board was very focused on developing talent and building bench strength. And I'm also on a board, AutoNation, S&P 500 company. I'm on that board of directors. And I know that in that boardroom, we're talking about succession planning and building bench strength and developing people. So the answer is very clear that leaders need to find that talent and they need to promote that talent because they are stewards of the success of the company. And so they would be foolish not to. So I do believe there is a reciprocal benefit for people identifying you as a talent and helping you achieve and accomplish your goals, and also developing you in a way that is going to help you do that.
And that's a great lesson for our listeners as well, is as we look at the next roles and jobs and career planning, is making sure it is a mutual fit. because
Right.
it's a reverse investment as well, as much as it is us investing in our own careers.
That's right. That's
Lisa,
right. Yeah.
uh, I'm gonna jump right in because I have so many questions for you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Pivoting us over to a little bit about the work life integration. You have talked about it in your book as well, in terms of balancing your personal uh, things that have. For I'm going to need this section to be a repeat because I'd like to reframe the question. So I'll go again.
No problem at all. That's fine. Whenever you're ready, you can start over.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Uh, So, Lisa, you've talked about how you had to deal with a personal tragedy and a scenario that required you to balance work and personal priorities. Can you share with our listeners a little more of the personal resilience it took in order to keep going, handling both simultaneously?
Sure. My personal situation that I talk about in the book was a tragic personal situation where I lost my sister, and my sisters mean everything to me. They have meant everything to me since my first sister that I lost was born when I was 2 years old. My whole life has been around my sisters, loving them, caring for them, spending as much time as I could with them. And so, as I was dealing with being shut down in our industry because of COVID, I was also dealing with my sister's terminal illness. And that's a tragic situation where I had to think about what 20,000 crew members needed from me to, build their hope and their confidence that we were going to come back and they were going to get their jobs back and they were going to be able to feed their families again and make their livings again, which in and of itself was a huge responsibility and something that I had to garner the strength for every single day because, being shut down for 15 months, we thought we would be shut down for 3 months. So some days I wasn't even sure myself, but I knew people were counting on me for that. And then of course I had my sister. The silver lining is that my sister lived with me. So I was able to spend every day of the last year of her life with her, which was a blessing in one sense. But I remember thinking, I'm on this screen, I'm trying to get this crew through that. My sister was going through that. My family needed me. And what I learned during that time is that sometimes you just have to compartmentalize certain things. On any given day, any hour of any day, our lives are imbalanced. They're not in balance. I think thinking that you're going to find balance and a nice balance is unrealistic. And I think women place a tremendous amount of stress on themselves and guilt, believing that you have to have this perfectly balanced life where you can be so many different things. You can be a professional, you can be a mom, you can be a sister, you can be a wife, you can be a daughter, you can be all of those things. Well, guess what? You can't. At one time, you can't be all of those things. It's impossible. So the way I looked at that when I was, working through those two really difficult times in my life, and then I think about it in the broader context of balance, the best we can do is the best we can do. And as long as you can look back at the end of the day, and I really can, and say that I prioritized everything I needed to when I needed to, then I believe that that's the best we can all hope for. And I believe if you can do that, you have been very successful at balancing the things in your life that are most important to you.
I am very sorry for your loss, Lisa. I cannot imagine what you're going through, but
Thank
I'm
you.
also super grateful you're comfortable sharing this with our listeners because this is the truth. A lot of the folks go through in multiple different dimensions, and
Yep,
having someone be open and willing to share this helps recognize that it isn't a lone battle. It's something that each one of us deal with on a daily basis. So
that's very true.
thank you. Uh, I'll keep uh, moving on because there's a lot of different dimensions that you take in your book. You have spoken extensively about maybe using the word no and erasing it from your vocabulary. A lot of times it's counterintuitive because when you say no, helps you actually solidify both your work life integration, but then also stay focused on the thing that you're expected to deliver. How have you navigated the paradox?
Well, because I just always want to help people and do things, I do have a hard time saying no. But that's a different topic of the word no than what I talk about in the book. What I talk about in the book and the way I live my life is that if someone tells me no, it's motivation for me to turn that no into a yes. And I do that in my personal life and I do it in my professional life. So, for example, if I say to my husband, I think we should do this,
Mhm.
he'll be like, no, we can't do that. No, that's not going to happen. And then what I do is I just think about that and say, all right, I'm going to turn that no into a yes. And in the end, I do it. I find a way or I make a way to turn that no into a yes. In my career, I was told no many different times. And I used that as motivation to turn the no into a yes. So we just talked about the story of how I was told no multiple times for my president and CEO role, but I refused to accept no for an answer. And I think that's really the point that I try to make in my lessons, because my book is all about the lessons I learned in my career. And I always ran into skeptics because here's the thing, the easiest answer someone can give you is no.
Mhm.
It's a lazy answer, it's an easy answer, but what you have to do is say, no, I don't accept that. We're going to find a solution. We're going to find a way. Now, it could be if you're just asking them to do something that you need to accomplish for your business or your job or your brand, or it could be about your career, whatever it is. We have to challenge the word no and the answer that someone gives us that's a no, because, my philosophy, somebody that worked for me had this great saying. His saying was, the answer is yes. Now, what's the question? And it's because so many people say no, and that's the mantra that I live by.
And it speaks to your resilience, Lisa, because a lot of times when you hear no, it can end up being a personal, or it's difficult to look at it objectively and say, let's go fix what's wrong and try to move forward. So
Right.
that's great advice for our listeners as well.
Well, I spent the first 17 years of my career in sales. And in sales, you hear no a lot. So you build up the resilience and the perseverance to just figure out, there's like, okay, there's some way I should be able to make this sale. There's some objection I should be able to overcome. So I think it was a great training ground for the rest of my career.
And since you jump back to your early life and starting around in sales and spending a significant amount of time there, if you had to go look back at a decade or 2 decades back, what advice would you give yourself, or things that you wish you had done differently?
I was very fortunate. I have been very fortunate in my career where I have had advocates and sponsors who really have put me in some amazing positions in the company. But what I wish I knew earlier is that I wish I believed in myself as much as they believed in me, because people saw talent in me and they saw, that I was capable of doing more and being a more impactful leader in the company. Like, I only wanted to be in sales. I only wanted to be the head of sales. I never thought I'd be the president and CEO of Celebrity, but someone else saw something in me and they moved me around and into different positions in the company. And I wish I dreamt bigger, and I wish I was more open to doing that earlier in my career, because it was the first time it happened was in 2001 was when I was moved from sales into marketing. And that was the true catalyst for the rest of my career. And I didn't want that. Somebody forced me to do it. And that was, I think, something I should have been more open to, and realized was such a great opportunity for me.
Dreamt bigger is what I heard. And
Yeah. And take risks and get out of your comfort zone and do something new. And don't be afraid. Have courage to do something different and something new.
that's definitely going to be a phrase I take back with myself.
Good.
Thank you, Lisa. And as we get closer to our time here, for our listeners that are going to be looking at your book and listening through Making Waves, what would be a quick 30-second takeaway that you have for them?
I think having courage and trying something new and getting out of your comfort zone and believing in yourself, and and navigating your career in the right way. The subtitle of Making Waves is A Woman's Rise to the Top, using smarts, heart, and courage. And what I would say is you need this unique combination of attributes to achieve the greatest success and your greatest potential.
And what does that look like for Lisa in the next chapter?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because I am leaving the company after 39 years. In 2 months, I'll be leaving the company, and I'll be starting a new and next chapter. And I think it goes right back to my comment about courage. I finally had the courage after 39 years to say, it's time to do something else. I've accomplished everything I can. I've had an amazingly wonderful career. And now I want to see what the universe has in store for me. And that was a big leap, and it took a lot of courage. I can't talk about it yet, but I will be able to in a couple of months, and maybe you'll invite me back.
True to your word. Just takes a lot of
Absolutely.
courage to both start and end things.
Yes. Yes.
Super glad to have you here, Lisa. And thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us and our listeners as well. Uh, there's a lot of learnings and takeaways that I take with myself, both on the professional as well as the personal front, just from this chat. So super grateful to have you here and spend the time talking to us. And my book is arriving shortly, so looking forward to actually reading it in depth.
Thank you. It was such an honor and pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.